Lost to Found. Chapter 1. Hitting Rock Bottom. Martha Simmons never imagined her life would come to this. At 45 years old, she had spent the better part of 2 decades hustling, piecing together gig after gig, hoping each week would stretch just far enough to cover the essentials. Food, a Metro card, rent, a little dignity if there was anything left over. But gig work didn't come with safety nets. No sick days, no benefits, no promises. So when her hours dried up one slow winter, so did her options. The eviction notice came on a Tuesday. The ink was cold, official, and merciless. She stood in the doorway of her apartment, half empty, half forgotten, holding that slip of paper like it had the power to erase her. There was no one to call. No mother waiting with open arms. No friend offering a spare couch. Just silence and a deep, crushing shame that settled in her chest like concrete. That night she wandered the streets of the city she used to know, now a blur of noise and neon and nowhere to go. She rode the subway in circles, pretending she had somewhere to be. She kept her coat wrapped tight, kept her head down, kept herself from falling apart in public. But inside, she was unraveling. With everything she owned stuffed into 2 black trash bags, and her sense of self-worth hanging by a thread, Martha felt invisible, forgotten, like a ghost floating through her own life. And for the first time in years, she wasn't just tired. She was done. Done fighting, done hoping, done pretending. She had hit rock bottom. But even rock bottom, she would later learn, has a floor. Chapter 2. A Glimmer of Hope. The shelter was nothing like Martha had imagined. It wasn't quiet, it wasn't clean, and it certainly wasn't easy. The fluorescent lights hummed all night, casting harsh shadows over the room. Conversations didn't whisper, they echoed. Laughter turned sharp. Arguments flared without warning. And sleep? It was more of a suggestion than a guarantee. The windows were dressed with cheap, bent blinds that barely kept the sun out, or the cold in. Privacy was a concept that didn't belong here. You changed clothes facing the wall and held your breath hoping no one was watching. Martha curled up on the thin mattress they called a bed, her coat still on, one arm draped protectively over her duffel bag. Around her, the slow shuffling of feet, the occasional cough, and the metallic click of lockers filled the silence between restless hours. She felt raw, embarrassed, like the world had seen all her secrets at once and had chosen not to care. But morning came, and with it, a cafeteria tray slid in front of her. 2 hard-boiled eggs, a slice of dry toast, and a paper cup filled with something they called coffee. It tasted like warm brown water, but it was warm. And today, warm was enough. She barely had time to adjust before someone sat beside her, a woman with deep lines around her eyes, and a calm that felt earned. "New?" she asked gently, sliding a second cup of that same sad coffee across the table. Her name was Linda. There was no pity in her eyes, just recognition, like she'd been here too, like she still was, but had figured out how to live through it. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the noise around them. And for a moment, Martha felt anchored. Later that day, she noticed another face, Maria, late 20s, early 30s maybe. She always had a book in hand, or a set of notes, studying like her life depended on it. Because maybe it did. She was in a certified nursing assistance program, using her evenings to memorize medical terms by the flicker of hallway light. Martha didn't understand it. How these women, surrounded by the same noise, sleeping on the same beds, waking up to the same boiled eggs and weak coffee, still carried themselves like the world hadn't beaten them down completely. They were tired, sure, but not broken, not finished. And despite herself, Martha started listening in. Not to gossip, but to the group talks Linda hosted twice a week. She didn't speak, just listened. And what she heard surprised her. Stories of loss, yes, but also of rebuilding, of boundaries, of laughter in the face of struggle, of little wins, a job interview, a GED test passed, a visit from a grown child. These women weren't just surviving, they were planting seeds in the ruins. Hope didn't crash in like a storm. It tiptoed through the cracks, quiet and steady. And though Martha didn't recognize it yet, something inside her had started to grow. Chapter 3: Therapy and Self-Discovery. It started with a clipboard and a quiet suggestion. There's a sign-up sheet for therapy sessions. No pressure, Linda said one morning, nodding toward the bulletin board by the vending machine. They're free. Martha hesitated. Therapy wasn't something people like her did. Not growing up. Not when you had to work, survive, and smile through everything. You buried it. You pushed through. You didn't talk about what hurt. But something about Linda's voice made it feel like less of a suggestion and more of an invitation. So she wrote her name down. The first session was awkward. The room smelled like hand sanitizer and worn-out carpet. The chairs squeaked. She sat across from a therapist whose notebook stayed closed, whose eyes didn't flinch when Martha said, "I don't even know why I'm here." But the woman, Jasmine, just nodded and said, "Then that's where we'll start." And somehow, they did. Week after week, Martha returned. Slowly at first, then more willingly. Some days she said very little. Other days, she couldn't stop. Memories she thought she'd buried began bubbling up. Grief she never mourned. Choices she never forgave herself for. Moments that had shaped her without her permission. They peeled back in layers, like old wallpaper under heat. She talked about the boyfriend who chipped away at her confidence year after year, until she forgot who she was. About the job she loved and lost, because she spoke up when no one else would. About the way poverty wasn't just financial, it was emotional, too. She cried, she raged, and then she breathed. Jasmine helped her understand that surviving wasn't the same as healing, that being strong didn't mean being silent, that she didn't have to carry every burden alone, and more than anything, that she was still here, still standing, still capable of change. For the first time in years, Martha could picture a version of herself that didn't just exist, but thrived. A woman with choices, with voice, with boundaries, with dreams. And that vision, still fragile, still forming, became her North Star. She wasn't fixed, but she wasn't stuck anymore either. Chapter 4: The First Step. Progress isn't always a straight line. Sometimes it's a hallway with bad lighting, old tile, and a whole lot of side-eye. Martha had started to shift. Therapy was helping. Linda's groups were making sense. The fog in her mind was slowly lifting, and she was beginning to see herself differently. But not everyone was ready for her growth. And in places like the shelter, tight spaces, fragile egos, too many stories wound together, change could look like arrogance to someone who wasn't ready to move. It happened one night in the bathroom. Martha had just washed her face and was heading back to bed when she heard it. "Oh, look, here come Miss Oprah. Miss Uplift Yourself. Miss I'm Too Good for This." She turned and saw them. 3 women gathered by the far stall, cigarettes tucked behind their ears, bathrobes hanging open like they owned the place. The bathroom was their territory, their late-night clubhouse, and Martha had just walked through it like she didn't need permission. One of them, Tanya, took a long drag from her smoke, exhaled, and said loud enough for the echo to carry, "You going to another one of them little group meetings? What, they got snacks now?" The others laughed. Not a funny laugh, a bitter one. Martha paused. Her first instinct was to keep walking, but something in her froze. Not out of fear, out of principle. She had come too far to shrink now. Too far to let somebody else's bitterness get on her clothes like the smell of that cigarette smoke. So she turned around, calm, collected, and said, I go to those meetings because I'm trying to change. Not because I think I'm better than you, but because I know I'm better than where I used to be. Silence. The laughter faded. Then she added, soft but sharp, and if you ever get tired of standing still, you're welcome to pull up a chair. Linda's got plenty. Then she walked out. Her heart was racing, hands slightly shaking, but her spine, straight, solid. That night, Martha realized that growth isn't just about what you gain. Sometimes, it's about what you refuse to lose. And she wasn't about to lose herself. Not now. The very next morning, she signed up for the job readiness program. Resume building, interview practice, basic computer training. It was overwhelming at first. Half the time, she didn't know what she was doing, but she kept showing up, kept sitting in the front, kept asking questions, even when she felt embarrassed. Every new skill was a quiet revolution. Every checked-off task, a small victory. And by the end of that month, she had a resume that didn't just list her struggles. It highlighted her survival. Martha Simmons was no longer just surviving. She was preparing to rise. Chapter 5. Certifications and New Opportunities. The job readiness program had lit a fire under Martha, but it was Corey who kept it burning. Tall, wiry, always in motion, Corey was the type of instructor who didn't waste time or energy. Funny when he wanted to be, serious when it mattered, and a notorious clock watcher. If you came back from lunch late, you better have a good excuse, or a good pair of sneakers. Life don't wait, and neither do I, he'd say with a smirk, checking his watch like it was part of his arm. But under all that grit was something softer. Corey meant well. He pushed because he believed in every person who sat in those chairs, even when they didn't believe in themselves yet. And the class loved him for it. One day, after a particularly grueling workshop on job interview tactics, Corey pulled Martha aside. There's a new program opening up, he said. Data analytics. It's in person, small cohort, real serious. Comes with a stipend and job placement support, if you can get in. Martha raised an eyebrow. What's the catch? You gotta write an essay, he replied. Then if they like you, you get an interview. No essay, no shot. An essay. Martha hadn't written anything longer than a grocery list in years. She stared at the flyer that night like it was written in another language, but something inside her whispered, you can do this. So she did. She wrote from the heart, about her journey, her hunger to grow, her belief that learning something new could change the course of her life. When she turned it in, her hands were shaking. Days passed. Then a week. Nothing. The doubt crept in like cold air under a locked door. What were you thinking, Martha? That someone like you would get picked? But then, an email. She'd made it to the interview round. And when they called to say she'd been selected for the next cohort, she clutched her phone to her chest and cried. Real, whole-body tears. Not from sadness, but from the sheer disbelief that someone had said yes. The program was intense. Long days, packed schedules, lectures, labs, team projects. The learning curve was steep, but Martha was steeper. She carved out study time wherever she could, on folding tables in the laundry room, between rinse cycles and dryer buzzers. After curfew, she'd hide under her thin blanket with a flashlight, scribbling notes in the margins of her workbook, whispering definitions to herself in the dark. She was exhausted, but it was a good tired, a purposeful tired. Some nights Linda would peek into the laundry room and just nod. No words needed. They both understood what was happening. One night Tanya passed by as Martha was packing up her books. You still at it? She asked, voice low, almost curious. Martha didn't look up from zipping her bag. Yeah, she said. Still at it? Tanya didn't reply, but she didn't walk away either. She stood there for a long moment, watching. The final exam came and went in a blur of numbers and pressure. And when the results came in, when the certificate arrived with her name printed across the top, Martha pressed it to her chest and closed her eyes. She had done it. She hadn't just survived the course. She had earned her place in a world she once thought was closed off to her. And now? She was ready to knock on doors she used to be too afraid to approach, because this time, she knew she had something to offer. Chapter 6. A New Beginning. The call came just after lunch. "You've been approved. The apartment's yours." Martha could barely speak. She clutched the phone so tight her fingers went numb, nodding as if the leasing agent could see her through the receiver. There was still paperwork, a few inspections. She couldn't move in just yet, but it was happening. The key was coming. She wasn't dreaming anymore. She was transitioning. That evening, she treated a handful of women from the shelter to coffee and pastries at the local cafe. Nothing fancy, just warmth, sugar, and a break from institutional blandness. They laughed. They toasted to fresh starts with chipped mugs. They took up space without apology. Tanya even joked, "Next time, we're coming to your kitchen." Later that week, Martha stopped by the community center to share the good news with Corey and the rest of the job readiness crew. Corey, in his usual clock-watching glory, said, "Just don't start showing up late to brunch dates, now that you bougie." Then added quieter, "Proud of you, Simmons." That Friday night, she got back to the shelter just a bit before curfew. Her body was tired, feet sore from walking all day, eyes burning from the late-night studying she was still doing, just in case another opportunity popped up. She'd spent the afternoon finishing paperwork at the housing office, and the evening picking up dollar store dish towels and a broom for her new place. Her hands were full, her heart even fuller. But the second she stepped into the common area, she felt the shift in the air. A new girl, slim build, cornrows, fresh energy with sharp edges, was posted up near the stairwell, eyeing Martha like she'd just walked into the wrong part of town. "Oh," she said, loud enough to make sure everyone heard. "So this the one they keep whispering about? Miss Chosen One? Miss Soon-to-be-gone?" Martha stopped, blinking slow. She wasn't in the mood. The girl kept going. "You know you still here, right? Don't start acting like you above the rest of us just 'cause you got keys coming." Martha took a deep breath. She wasn't about to let this energy derail her joy. But before she could say anything, a voice rang out from the hallway. "You got a problem with Martha." All heads turned. Tanya emerged, hoodie on, hands in pockets, and flanked by two familiar faces, Simone and Rhonda, the same ladies who used to rule the bathroom late night like it was VIP. Tanya's voice was calm, cool, and unshakable. "Then you got a problem with us. And trust me, this ain't what you want, young head." The new girl froze. She blinked once like she was calculating her next move. But the tension cracked. Just like that. She muttered something under her breath and turned away, walking toward the vending machines like nothing had happened. Martha exhaled slowly. She looked at Tanya, who just shrugged like it was nothing. "You helped us see something different," Tanya said. "We not about to let nobody drag that backwards." That night, Martha crawled into her bunk, her shopping bags tucked neatly at her side. A broom, a set of dollar store towels, and one blue mug she'd picked up because it reminded her of sky and peace. She pulled the covers up tight, clicked on her tiny flashlight, and opened her notebook. Her hands were trembling from exhaustion, but she still turned to a blank page. And with quiet breaths and slow strokes of her pen, she wrote a letter. To herself. To the woman she would soon become. If you're reading this, you made it. Not all the way, not yet, but out of the worst of it. Out of the shelter, out of the cycle, out of the belief that you had to stay small, to stay safe. Remember this feeling. Sitting in a bunk bed with a notebook in your lap, afraid and excited at the same time. Remember how much it took to hold on when no one saw you, but you saw yourself. Don't ever forget who you were when no one was watching. And if life ever gets loud again, like I know it will, come back here. Come back to this moment. You climbed your way out, sis. Now stay out and shine. She read it twice, then folded the page, tucked it behind the cover, and rested her hand on it for a long moment, like she was sealing it with something sacred. Then she turned off the light, closed her eyes, and whispered to herself, "Almost there." Chapter 7. Giving Back. 6 months later, Martha stood in the very same community center where she had once stumbled in, head low, hands shaking. But this time, she wasn't there for help. She was there to offer it. Her name was printed on the flyer, guest speaker, Martha Simmons, from shelter to tech. And the folding chairs? Packed. She wore a simple blazer, her natural hair pulled back, and her favorite blue mug sat beside her, now filled with real coffee. The good kind. The strong kind. She told her story, not to impress, but to remind. Remind them that rock bottom is real, but it's not permanent. That fear doesn't get the final say. That healing takes time. And people. She talked about therapy. About late-night study sessions in the laundry room. About Tanya checking a girl so fast she didn't even have to raise her voice. The crowd laughed, nodded, some even wiped tears. Corey was there, arms crossed and grinning in the back, trying not to look too proud. But he was. Everyone could see it. Afterward, women lined up to talk to her. Not just from the shelter, but from other programs, other boroughs. They wanted to know where to start, how to keep going, if it was really possible. And Martha told them what no one had told her. Yes, it is. One step, one choice, one small win at a time. That moment became the seed for something bigger. With the help of a few small grants and Corey's constant reminders to stick to deadlines, Martha launched her nonprofit, Reclaim and Rise. It started simple. A one-page website, a rotating calendar of workshops, a donated office space with mismatched furniture and flickering lights. But it grew fast. She hired Linda to lead wellness groups. Tanya? She became a peer mentor, straight-talking, zero fluff, loved by the younger girls who needed to see toughness with a backbone of truth. Maria came on board part-time, helping women navigate CNA and healthcare training programs. They weren't just giving out resources. They were handing out belief. And belief, Martha knew, was a currency that could change everything. She visited shelters often, some the same, some new. She'd sit in the back during intake, watching women walk in with that look she remembered so well. She never approached them too quickly. She knew sometimes the best thing you can do is just be there. Stable, visible, and living proof. Martha's world had shifted completely, but she stayed close to the ground that had once held her broken. Because to her, success wasn't measured by square footage or job titles. It was measured by how many hands you reached back with when you finally climbed out. Epilogue. A letter in the box. It had been 4 years. The studio apartment was no longer her home. Now, she was boxing it all up, preparing to move into a place with more space, more light, and a balcony where she could finally grow the plants she never had time for. Martha knelt beside an old tote bin marked notebooks, pulling out journals, folders, program handouts, pieces of a woman she used to be. And then, there it was, folded, worn at the corners, still tucked behind the cover of a lined spiral notebook with a missing back. She opened it slowly, her breath caught in her throat. It was the letter, her letter, written late one night, under a shelter blanket, with a flashlight clutched in one hand, and hope burning low, but steady in the other. She sat down on the bare floor and read it, line by line. If you're reading this, you made it. And she had. She wasn't just working anymore. She was leading. She wasn't just surviving. She was funding survival for others. She wasn't just dreaming. She was being invited to rooms where women like her used to be an afterthought. But the truth was, she still needed this letter. Because even now, life got loud. Even now, doubt whispered in quiet corners. Even now, that tired, trembling woman from the shelter still lived inside her. Just quieter now, more whole. Martha pressed the page to her chest and closed her eyes. She didn't cry. She smiled. Softly, deeply. Like someone who had traveled a long road and finally understood just how far they'd come. Then, without hesitation, she folded the letter, placed it in a new frame, and set it aside, ready for the wall in her new home. A reminder, not of where she had fallen, but of how she had risen.